Hi, this is Dorothy's daughter. Welcome to my channel. If you're looking to take your sewing to the next level, this is the place to be. First, I'd like to say thank you to my new subscribers. As I started filming today, I was at 10,999 subscribers, which blows my mind. So if you want to be number 11,000, click that subscribe button today for me. Today's video is going to be all about sewing knits and hemming knits. I'm going to show you 5 ways to hem a knit. And it depends on the style and the fabric which one you would choose. But I'm going to show you my 5 ways of hemming knits. The first thing though, I'm going to give you just some basic sewing tips, because last week we talked about handling the knits. We did not talk about sewing them. So there's just a few things to know about that, and I'm going to share that with you here in a moment. But first, I want to just encourage you to join our Facebook group. It's Dorothy's Daughter Community on Facebook, and so if you search for that, you'll see the group. It's a private group. You just click Join Group, and then I will go and allow you in. Please answer the questions, though, because it's my only way of knowing that you're not a robot. So if you don't answer them, I really don't have a choice, but unless I recognize your name from the chats or whatever, I really don't have any way of knowing that you're not a robot. So please answer at least 1 or 2 of the questions, okay? That's the basic reason they're there. I also have them there so I can kind of get a feel for what you guys want. So if there are things that you really want to see on the channel, please feel free to share them there. Alright, so first I just want to talk about a few things about sewing knits. And I like to think, when I master a topic, I like to think about what is the crux of what I'm learning. I mean, I can learn all these techniques, but exactly why and what is the overlying principle behind everything else that I'm learning to do. And for this, it's that with knits, you just need to know when to stretch, when not to stretch, and when you sew, you want to use a stitch that will stretch with the garment. If you don't do that, then when you put the garment on, all you'll hear is pop, 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 stitches will pop. It's not a very good thing to happen in public. When I began sewing knits, it did happen to me. It probably has happened to everyone that you hear a stitch pop or two. Not a good thing. So you want to start off right and know the stitches to use when you're sewing knits. You want to use a stretch stitch. So a stitch that stretches. On a regular sewing machine, you can sew knits on a regular sewing machine. You do not have to have a serger. Having a serger makes things a little more pleasant, a little easier, but if you do it on a regular sewing machine, I did that for years, okay? You use a narrow zigzag, because zigzag stitches all stretch, okay? So if you use a narrow zigzag and you use either the lightning bolt, the zigzag, there's a few other ones that stretch. Most sewing machine manufacturers will have some kind of literature that tells you which of the stretches stitch. Basically, if they have zigzag in them, most of them do. So you want to look for those that have some zigzag in them. So the lightning bolt stitch is made for stretch knits. You can do your own narrow zigzag. You can do a wider zigzag in some cases. You can do a blind hem that has the zigzag in between instead of the straight stitching. So on a sewing machine, you can find lots of different stitches that you can use. Okay, so don't think you cannot sew knits unless you have a serger, because that's absolutely not true. Okay, and I'm going to show you some of those stitches while we're hemming. Okay. Also, the serger, of course, all serge stitches stretch, and cover stitch. So all of those stitches will stretch with the garment, and that is probably the safest thing to do, but I sewed knits for 30 years without a serger, so you can do it. I actually had a serger. I had one of those Janome sewing machines that was the combi, and well, I still have it actually, and there's the serger on the back, but it's only a 2-thread serger, not meant for seams really, and I really didn't know how to use it, so I didn't really use it very much. And then I thought that that's what all sergers were, so I wasn't impressed. For a long time I thought, why do I want one of those? I have this on the back and I don't like it. So once I found out what a 4-thread serger can do, it's a big difference, okay? So if you are using a serger that only has 3 threads, you can get by with doing a seam, but the best, most secure seams are going to be your 4-thread serged threads. All right, the other thing is you want to do lots of pressing, because lots of steam, lots of pressing, usually as much as the fabric can handle. It will cover a multitude of waves and puckers and things. You can get rid of a lot of what you don't think looks right just by doing a good press, okay? And the other thing is your needle. Definitely use a ballpoint needle or a stretch needle. And the size can be whatever the thickness of the fabric is, but the point of the needle should be ballpoint. A jersey needle, ballpoint needle, stretch needle, they're called all different things. Some of them work better with certain fabrics than others. Obviously the jersey needle works well with jersey. So just go ahead and try any of those. They're all good for knits. Alright, so now I want to tell you the 5 different hems. So which one you choose depends on the weight of the fabric, the garment design, the shape of the hem, those kind of things. So you want to just kind of choose the one that works best for the garment. So the first one I want to show you is basically a blind hem. And I did this on a piece of cotton lycra because it's a little thicker. This would be much better on a stabler knit like a ponte. So you can see that you can barely see the stitching on here, and this is white thread, so if it were matching thread you wouldn't probably see it at all. So this is a blind hem, and I'm going to show you all about blind hemming knits right now. So for the first option you're going to use your blind hem foot. So you're going to fold up the hem. You'll use something to measure. I'm just going to eyeball it for our purposes here, but you're going to give it a good press, and then you're going to also press it with just a little bit poking out. If you can see that, a tiny bit poking out there. You can see what I did there. So just this little bit is poking out so that you can catch that for the blind hem. Now this one's only good for like more stable knits, thicker knits. This is a cotton lycra, and it's not probably what I would use for this hem, but it is a little bit sturdier than what I'm using for some of the other ones. So, alright, we're going to go to the sewing machine now. This is the stitch you want right here. It's the blind hem stitch, but it has zigzags in between the stitches that hem it. For stretch knits, you want to use the one with the zigzag because it'll stretch, rather than this one, which is for straight stitching. Okay? Your blind hem foot may look different on each machine. This one is the newer Janome one, and I can't say that I've actually seen one quite like this, so this will be a first time since this is a new machine for me. So what you want to do is just line your fabric, fold up with that guide, and just go along, guiding your fabric there, and then you have a blind hem. Some of these stitches are visible. If this were a ponte and matching thread, you'd never see it. Okay? That is a blind hem. The next one I want to show you is a stabilized straight hem. And basically, you use some stay tape, which I'm going to show you and talk about in a moment. And basically, this is a straight hem that I have reinforced with knit interfacing strips or knit stay tape. SewKeys-E is the brand name that a lot of people use. I actually make it myself with knit interfacing. just cut in strips, and I wind them on an old spool. Here, I'll show you one. So I wind it on an old thread spool, just knit interfacing, cut in strips, and cut on the direction of stretch, so you make sure it can stretch. And this one is cover stitched after turning it up, and you can see how much this one stretches. No popping. So that is an amazing hem. This is probably what I use 99% of the time if it's a straight hem. And I'm going to show you how to do that one right now. Now this is a little bit thinner, like an ITY type knit. And I like to use, when I'm just going to turn up a hem and cover stitch, I like to use a knit stay tape. Now you can purchase this from Emma Seabrook. It's called SewKeys-E. It can be rather expensive. This is fusible knit stay tape is what it is. But what I like to do is make my own. And all you need is some knit interfacing, and then you cut it in strips on the direction of the stretch. So then we're going to give that some good steam. Make sure you give it a good 10 seconds or so. Till it's nice and adhered. And then you're going to turn it up right on the edge. So you'll have a 1-inch hem here, because I made 1-inch tape. And then you're just going to go ahead and hem that into place. So now you have this pressed up. You have your stay tape and you pressed it up. And now you can take this and you can top stitch or cover stitch it into place. I'm going to go ahead and take you over to the cover stitch machine so you can see how. I'm going to go ahead and take this over to the cover stitch so you can see how that looks. Okay, so this is 1 inch away, so I'm going to see which one of these markings is 1 inch away from my needle. And here 1 inch is about halfway between these two marks. Now you can get a piece of tape or a Lego, but I just kind of eyeball it. I'm going to use some contrasting thread so that you can see what it looks like. Here's the cover stitched hem. You can see that stretches. It's an absolutely perfect way to hem a knit. And the knit stay tape gives it some stability so that it will drape nicely and not just hang loose. Okay, that's another way. Here is my cover stitched hem. Let's bring it close here. And it stretches with the fabric. It has some body because I put this knit stay tape in there, so it should hang really nicely. This is wonderful for the bottom of a flowy blouse. You can also cut them in strips of 1/2 inch if you don't want this wide of a hem as well. Alright? So the next three are for those garments that have a narrow edge to them or need some flounce, need a narrower hem. So the first one of that, which would be hem number 3, is to just leave the edges raw. If you use a rotary cutter and it's a nice clean cut, there's no reason you can't leave an edge raw. It works really well on flounces, on circle skirts for like little girls. Sometimes you just don't want any more bulk, and since knit does not fray, if you have a nice, good, clean cut, you can leave it unfinished. So that is another way that you can finish a knit. You don't have to do anything to it. You just make sure it's cut clean. Number 4, number 3 was kind of cheating because you really aren't hemming it, but I did want to mention it because a lot of people don't think you can do that, but you can. All right, the next one is a curved hem, and this is my favorite little trick. I put fusible thread in my upper looper and I get a beautiful curved hem, and I'm going to show you how to do that right now. Okay, this is fusible thread, and I am going to put that in the upper looper of my serger. This is particularly useful when you have a serger that threads itself. It makes it much easier to do this. Alright, go ahead and put that in there. Catch your tray back down. Alright, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to serge right on the edge without cutting anything off. And I'm going to do this on the wrong side. So it looks as if, okay, that we're curling towards this way. So this is the right side. So I'm going to do that on the wrong side, on the inside of the garment, so that you can turn it up. Okay, and I'm just going to serge the edge without really cutting anything off. So as you can see, we have this line of, I did half of this one, so I can show you another technique on this side. We have a line of fusible thread on the inside. So what we're going to do is turn that up and press. You go all the way around. This one's a little... Okay, so you can see you end up with a really nice little hem. And on the other side, this is what it looks like. Super, super nice. Alright. And I have tops that I've used this method and washed for, I have one that's 4 years old that I wear all the time. So that's a great method. The only downside to that is, you know, having to buy fusible thread. Sometimes it can be hard to find. I recently found out that Joann's always carries it. The other thing is that you have to thread your serger. So if you don't have an easy threading serger, that can be an issue for you. But I absolutely love this method. It's probably my favorite for a curve. Next is a narrow hem. So similar to using the fusible thread, except this isn't fused. You do need to stitch it. You can get some Wonder Tape, and I'll show you how to do that right now, to do a narrow hem with Wonder Tape and top stitching. So the next hem, you're going to use Wonder Tape, and Wonder Tape is a brand name, but it really is basting tape. It's a 1/4 inch or so thick, and it just goes along the edge like so. This is really thin stuff here, guys. All right. This was the mystery fabric on Fabric Mart. So I decided that was something I could waste on showing all these hems. Okay, so you could just put your Wonder Tape on there. After you cut that, then you pull up the unsticky part to reveal the sticky tape, and then you just go along and fold up the sticky part so you can make it be right where you want it to be. And then you're going to go ahead and either cover stitch. Sometimes it takes a little fiddling. You're either going to cover stitch or top stitch the hem into place. And then when you wash the shirt, or whatever it is that you're hemming, the tape will wash away. Okay. Alright, so I'm going to take you to the sewing machine and sew this little bit with the Wonder Tape. So you can, and that way I can show you the stitch that I like to use for top stitching when you don't have a serger. So the stitch that I like to use on knits for top stitching is the zigzag. So I'm going to select the zigzag, and I have a preset in here for this particular zigzag. I have a 0.5 for width, very narrow, and about 2.10 for length. And you can play with that. It could be a little longer if you need it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how that looks. For this, you'll just use a regular foot. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some stitching. I like to use a hump jumper to get my knits started when they're sort of lightweight down into the machine. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch really close to the edge. I'm going at about 1/4 of an inch. You see I've got it lined up here with 1/4 of an inch. You could use your 1/4 inch foot. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and cut that. Alright, and then that is what a narrow hem would look like. Alright, here is my narrow hem. And of course, all of these will need pressing at the end to just make sure that they lay nice and flat. Okay, that stitch is almost not discernible that it is a zigzag, and yet it does stretch. The Wonder Tape makes it a little hard to stretch, but it does stretch. So that's what I use for top stitching if I'm using my sewing machine. And I should mention that you can, of course, press your seam up, pin it, and stitch it without any of this extra help. But this does really help a lot. And I think that it makes it quicker, more pleasant. Nothing is worse than having to rip out serge stitches or cover stitch stitches or anything on knits, because it's so easy to put a hole in them. So, you know, using Wonder Tape, using fusible products, and I should mention on that fusible hem, a lot of people ask me, do you have to stitch it? And to that I will say, where did it go? To that I will say no. I have used this on many tops, and some of them I've had for 2 and 3 years, and they've been washed and washed and washed, and they're not even close to coming undone. So definitely you do not have to do that. However, if you want to, you can stitch over it. Okay? Alright, so those are some ways to hem knits. And I hope that you're getting a little less afraid to approach knits. They're not hard at all. Just remember to know when to stretch, when not to stretch, and pick a stitch that stretches with it. That's the overarching principle of the entire crux of sewing knits. So I hope you have a fantastic day. Go ahead and click that subscribe button down below, and please give me a comment, like, or share. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for everything. Happy sewing.